Hello, everybody. Hello, Mr. James Boggs is already in the chat room. How's it going? Surprise, surprise, it is actually a live show. It was not supposed to be, if you remember. So I'm going to give you a bit of a background on it. Last week, we said that Rob was going to be busy today, which he is, and we were going to do a pre-recorded episode on Wednesday so that we'd both have something. But he came down with something, some kind of, just wasn't feeling well on earlier in the week. So he told me, hey, you know what? You handle it. So here I am, live instead of pre-recorded. Surprise. Um, good on you, James. So here we are, and I figured I'd go for a classic topic that we haven't talked about for a while because Rob's not as into he's not into this as some of you other folks are, so we don't go back to it as much. But let's talk Bigfoot. Let's talk Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, all that kind of good stuff, because we haven't gone back and discussed that for a while. We've had a few guests on, like Amy Boo has been on, Les Odell has been on, who've talked to us about Bigfoot and things like that. And I thought I would go back and revisit that a little bit. Let me adjust my camera smidge and maybe adjust my microphone distance. There we go. And yeah, you guys are getting my porch light out there too, so it looks like it's daytime, but it's not. So Bigfoot. I have my own thoughts on Bigfoot, but I wanted to say a few facts about it. Being here in Ohio, Ohio is apparently the fourth most reported, the state with the fourth most reported Bigfoot sightings in the United States. So we get a lot of Bigfoot stuff here throughout the state, and especially around the border between Ohio and West Virginia. That is a known big hot spot. And everybody knows, we've talked about West Virginia many times in the past about how as a state, it's kind of like, ooh, ah, and kind of the Native Americans always treated it with a kind of a bit of a hands-off sort of thing. They wouldn't stay there. They would just pass on through, but they wouldn't have any permanent settlements there. But so the border is a big Bigfoot area. And you still get sightings to this day in the state of Ohio. Now, what it tells me is mostly because while Ohio as a whole is kind of a very flattish, there's not much going on as far as terrain in Ohio. We do have a lot of forest. We do have a lot of woods, and we do have a lot of deep woods, much like certain parts of Western Pennsylvania. And I think that has something to do with it. Kind of like the Pacific Northwest. The Pacific Northwest is the number one. It's generally the number one area where people report Bigfoot sightings. My cats are fighting. Don't mind them. But I think it's because it's like kind of one of the last untapped wilderness areas of the United States. There's so much thick brush. How's it going, Z-Man? So much thick brush and just wide tracts of just trees upon trees upon trees. And as we've said in the past, just here in Ohio, and even where I grew up in Pennsylvania at first, you can go into an area of woods that really aren't that big, but they are heavily forested, and you can get lost. And you can get lost for a long time, especially if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not like an experienced woodsman or something like that, or if you don't know how to find north or whatnot. And it's in these kind of areas that I think something like Bigfoot thrives, because they know these areas and they're more familiar with these areas, and they're natural. I don't want to say woodsmen, but they're natural at what they do out in the wilderness. They are much better trackers. They're much better at camouflage. They're much better than we are as far as survival in that kind of environment, as far as I'm aware. Now, this is all speculation, of course. Everybody's still kind of on the fence about whether the Sasquatch or the Bigfoot is really a real creature. I don't dismiss the sightings. I don't dismiss the sightings myself. I think there is something out there, whether it's classically what we call a Bigfoot or not. I don't know, but I think there is something out there, and I'll get to my theory a little bit later on in the show. But I wanted to. I've got some photos of things. If you've heard of Bigfoot, then you've probably heard of or seen this image or even the film itself, which is, I believe, the Patterson-Gimlin film. That's the famous, most famous Bigfoot image that a lot of us have seen. When I was a kid, it was in all the different books about Bigfoot and all these unexplained things. And I'll tell you, I've seen the film many times. And lately, within the last, I believe sometime last year it was, maybe the year before, they applied AI to clean it up and try to, make it look clearer and make it look more so you could see it better. And it just made it look more and more as if it was not a real thing. It does not look like a real creature in this photo to me. It looks like a person in a suit. Now, people we've had on the show have met Bob Gimlin, who's one of the people who was involved with the event where this was filmed. And they've all said he's a nice guy. He's a genuine individual. He doesn't, talk big. He declines a lot of interviews because he's not looking to get famous, which is a telling point, because a lot of times the easiest way to spot a hoax is to check whether they're trying to be famous or not, or how much attention they're looking to get. And so I don't have any reason to distrust the guy. But looking at this and seeing the film, it doesn't look real to me. It looks like a person in a suit, a really good suit, but it looks like a person in a suit. What do you folks think? What do you think? We've all got our own thoughts about this kind of thing. And I don't know. But just because this being the most famous image seems like it's not real to me, doesn't mean that I disbelieve in the whole thing. I believe there is something out there. There is some kind of a creature or species of creature. Kind of an evolutionary throwback, I suppose, in a way. I think it's actually a de-evolved form, honestly. But like I said, we'll get to that a little bit later. Now, Les Odell, we've had him on the show plenty of times. He's gone out and well, and that's all right, James. I'm going to put your comment up there too, because as much as I don't believe it, I can't say that it isn't. I don't have all the facts myself, and you know us, we're skeptical, but we're also open to other people's opinions and things. So, by all means, I don't want anybody to come away from this thinking, "Oh, he just totally trashed on my views of everything," because that's not fair either. But where was I on it? Oh yeah, Les Odell. He's done plaster casts. He does that on pretty regular basis, and I've seen them in person, and they're impressive, and they're compelling. And I've seen a lot of the evidence that he's put together on this kind of stuff, and it does make you wonder. It does make you kind of think to yourself, is there really something out there? There's a lot of different things other than tracks that are involved in potential Bigfoot inhabitations. There's I guess one of the big things that they do, according to people who are knowledgeable about that kind of thing, is they build structures out of sticks, not necessarily like homes per se, but to mark areas or to block off different areas. Now, you could say it's just people going through, could be hikers, it could just be, a number of other things, but they're a relatively common thing. And occasionally they build what seem to be nests. Chris George, who is part of the Missing 411 group, he was a park ranger for the longest time. He works with the, let me look up their name, the Anubis Paranormal something or other. I always forget their whole name because let me make sure I've got it right. The Anubis Paranormal Research Organization. Okay, you guys can look them up on Facebook. They do a lot of posts and they look into a lot of this kind of stuff. And Chris is a pretty good guy. When we had Chris on the show, he offered a lot of compelling evidence as well. He experienced a lot of different things, and I can't discount a lot of the things that he said. And here, of course, we have Rob is with us here in the chat room. And that's his theory, as he's told you about on the show, which is compelling as well. Les Odell doesn't agree with that theory. He doesn't. He believes that there's too much, not enough airflow, and not too much potential for hazardous gases and things underground, bad air, which all valid theories. But Chris George has said that he went into what he believed may have been a Bigfoot nest. There weren't any Bigfoots there at the time, but when he went in, his phone reception went crazy. It went like down to nothing, and as soon as he went back out, full bars. James, another comment for you, and that's another thing. They do make a loud, like a whooping call. And depending on who you talk to will depend on how accurate they're able to reproduce that for you. Some people do it very well, and some people, who knows what they're trying to do. But that's a common thing too. And I want to bring you guys' attention. Let me get this out of here and bring up something else. It's going a little slow because this is the first time I'm doing this on my laptop, or not my laptop, on my tablet. It took me a while to get all this done. This is an artist's rendition of an event that we've talked about and we've watched in different documentaries. And it is about, let me pull up the article here. It is the Ape Canyon incident of 1924. And this is an interesting one. In here, you can see that they're throwing rocks at this cabin down below, and this is supposedly how the story went. This was in an area called Ape Canyon, which was named after this event, of course, in Mount St. Helens, Washington, in the Lewis River area. There was a man named Fred Beck, and he had a group of others who were gold prospecting in this area. And they claimed that that they found very large human-like footprints around their cabin, that they had been hearing noises at night and things of that nature. They went down for water in a nearby spring, and they saw a large ape-like creature, according to their accounts. And they took a shot at it, and then they took a shot at another one that was along the canyon wall. Supposedly they hit that one, and it fell into a gorge, but they didn't go to investigate it. They were like, you know what, let's get out of here. So they went back to their cabin, but that night, as they were in their cabin, they kept hearing noises outside. And after a while, there were large thumps and rocks and the sound of many things just hitting the cabin. A chunk of the material that joins the logs together fell out of one of the walls. And so they were able to look outside, and they saw what they believed to be several of these creatures, Bigfoot-style creatures. They tried to set up a system where when the creatures attacked, they would fire off blind shots with their rifles and then stopped when the creatures stopped to try to teach the creatures, hey, if you attack us, we're going to shoot back. And if you don't attack us, we're going to leave you alone. And it went on for, let me see how many hours. It was quite a while, all through the night. It was about 5 hours total. And eventually the whatever was out there gave up. And they found some damage outside. They found large footprints. They left the area, left much of their equipment behind, and they agreed later not to tell anyone, but then one of them leaked the story and it got out to the press. And they went back. A few of them went back. Other people went back to start hunting the area for apes, and they called it the Great Ape Hunt of 1924. Never did find anything. And the canyon was renamed Ape Canyon after the incident. Now, this is an interesting thing, too, because there's a lot of stories about Bigfoot where most of the time it's not hostile. It's just, it wants you out of its area, or it just ignores you, or moves on, and, you know, that kind of thing. It's generally not... Well, let me get the right screen here. There we go. It's generally not overly aggressive, other than trying to kind of scare you and get you out of its territory and you know, have you move on. So there's fewer stories of this, but you do hear them. You do hear them more in the deep south. Like Louisiana and Florida, you hear stories sometimes about skunk ape, is what it's called, which is a form of Bigfoot, according to some people, or some people say it's an entirely different cryptid. But you hear about it, and it's actively aggressive. It'll chase you down. It'll attack you. It'll like bare its teeth at you and things like that. Whiskey break. And so this is kind of the outlier story, but it's interesting. The cabin was lost over the years, but over relatively recently, over the last 5-10 years, they believe they found the original location of the cabin. A few people have. I've seen at least one documentary about it, but I haven't seen the rest of the evidence. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. Now, since Rob brought it up about what he thinks about where Bigfoot is located, I'm going to tell you what I think about Bigfoot. And this is kind of a controversial theory, because there's really no way to prove it necessarily, just like there's no way to prove whether Bigfoot exists or doesn't so far. There's a lot of potential evidence, and we all have our personal beliefs. This one goes all the way back to the end of the Ice Age. And usually Rob gets into the biblical stuff, but I'm going to kind of bring it up a little bit, because you guys know me. I'm always looking for, in various religious things, I'm looking for explanations for what potentially could be things that are divine, but maybe they aren't. And I don't want to display anybody or downplay anybody's religious beliefs or anything like that, or say that they're false. But I have this fascination with some things where certain biblical stories seem more like technology, or seem like futuristic tech to me, than they do divine things. And so I'll go all the way back to a story that we've talked about a lot. We've talked about the Watchers, which is the Nephilim and all that other kind of stuff. And I had a theory about it. Again, there's no proof, but my theory was that the story of the Watchers wasn't actually about fallen angels per se, but originally about another human species, which at the time may have been Neanderthal, because Neanderthal were bigger, they were stronger, they weren't smarter, but they were bigger and stronger than modern man when modern man started appearing on the scene. And I think because we do have evidence of Neanderthal and modern man interbreeding, along with interbreeding with the other human species that may have popped up along the same time frame. They were all compatible, and I think the stories of that came upon possible Neanderthal tribes kidnapping modern man here and there and taking them for mating, um, and either for or against their will necessarily. And I think that's where the story of the Watchers abducting or taking wives came from and breeding abominations, because I don't think they were so compatible that you came out with perfect offspring all the time. I think they ended up coming out with mutations that were not good, and disabilities and things like that. That's what I think. But over time, as we know, modern man supplanted Neanderthal. Neanderthal got pushed out, and the popular theory is that they went extinct. But because we know they interbred, we know their genes survived. And I don't think Neanderthal as a species went completely extinct. I think a few pockets of them continued to live on and actually went wilder and more feral over time. And because they were wilder and different from us in the beginning, I think they were more able to adapt to wilder places, and they withdrew, and they over time bred down into become what we know as possible Sasquatch and Bigfoot. That's a personal theory. Can't prove it. Who knows? I think it's really interesting. I think it's compelling. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it. And there's a lot of evidence. Oh, and here's another from James that kind of is interesting. In Russia, they believe that their Almasty is a Neanderthal, and I think it's a valid theory. I think it's perfectly valid because, as we know, humans, or at least hominids, are survivors. We've been through an awful lot of stuff, and I think Neanderthal was not quite as unintelligent as we believe they were. They were unintelligent maybe compared to us, but I think they were cunning enough and sentient enough. We've talked about him, I believe. I believe we have talked about him on the show. Let me put that up there. Colonel Perry Fawcett Maricoxy. I'm going to look it up real quick to make sure I know what I'm talking about at the same time, and to refresh my memory, because I believe we have talked about that on the show in the past. It's been a long time since we did a Bigfoot episode. So, if I can find it, Maricoxy. Yep. Yeah. And they were supposedly encountered in the Amazon, and by Colonel Percy Fawcett, and he had written records of his encounters with them, and they all seemed to be like Bigfoot and Sasquatch in that they didn't speak with a language that he understood, and he saw that they had bows and arrows, which is interesting. Because the thought that Bigfoot and Sasquatch uses tools is another relatively modern invention. That's something that Los Odell is into. He has said that they build structures like little nests or things that require a little bit more foresight than just picking up a bunch of torn grass and throwing it in a pile. And it gets you thinking. Because if something is smart enough to do that, wouldn't it be smart enough to remain hidden? And the popular thing is to say among skeptics is to say that, well, if it was out there, we would have found it by now. Maybe we would have, maybe we wouldn't. In the last couple of shows, we talked about certain things. I mentioned the coelacanth. We believed it was a extinct prehistoric fish. We believed it extinct until they caught one off the coast of Africa. So there's a lot that we believe that we don't know, because either we just assume that it's not how it is, or that it's not possible. And you can apply that to a lot of different areas. You can apply that to things like Loch Ness Monster, which is, again, who knows? There's a lot of hot debates about that, and about possibly being lake eels and things like that. You can apply that towards thunderbirds. You can apply it towards other different, cryptid creatures that aren't really in the same realm as say, like Mothman, or which even Mothman might be a natural creature. Who knows? Or a lot of good comments, by the way. Flatwoods Green Monster, we assume it's not a natural creature, part of this world. We believe it's like an alien being. Yeah, so it's, I can't be 100% skeptical about that kind of stuff myself. I think there's just too much circumstantial evidence of these things existing. No, I've never seen personally, other than what I've seen from other people, other than the plaster casts and photos that I've seen from people like Les Odell or Amy Boo. I have not seen in person. I've never gone out into the woods and seen my own evidence of a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot creature. So I can't personally attest to it one way or the other. I have watched a lot of different things. Like I've watched the Small Town Monsters documentaries about Chestnut Ridge, and about what was that one? What was it? It wasn't from Missouri or Mississippi. What was it from? We went there. We went to the Palace Theater, and they had a guy dressed up. You might remember, Rob, if you're still in the chat there. Mojo? No. Momo, the Missouri monster, is potentially like a Bigfoot style creature. So I've seen that kind of stuff, but I've never seen anything myself. I would like to. Whether I'm going to actually get out into the forest on any given time, who knows? Now, he does bring up a good point. Rob says that we did see stacked rocks at Rogues Hollow, which is a local area here in Ohio, which we don't know. I mean, we don't know if that was people, or I think we did see somebody who was actually doing stacked rocks while we were there once. Somebody and his kid. So, that could all be done by people or pranksters, or it could actually be done by a creature like that. I would like to go to a place in the deep forest, like someplace like Pacific Northwest, and see some of these areas for myself, and then find out if I catch anything. Not actually catch anything. I'm not going to go out and put traps and be like, hey, I'm going to catch this little Bigfoot. But I would like to go to one of those environments, just like I would like to go to the areas where Mothman was seen, and I'd like to kind of just experience the area and see if anything jumps out at me. I will look forward to that, Mr. James Boggs. I will look forward to hearing that story as well, and I respect your decision too. I respect your decision not to want to go looking for those things. Ingrained Cyclist is back with us this week, and he says Bigfoot hunting vlog when. We've had thoughts, like Rob and I have actually had the idea of doing things like this. Not, because we're not serious. We don't go to places. We don't hunt ghosts. We don't do those kind of Zach Baggins things. But I think it would be. We do have a couple ideas to go do some of those things. We're more into the presentation and the digging for the history and that kind of stuff. But we are Pardon me, I talk so much and it's just drying in my throat. We do intend to go to some of these places. It seems like this year, like we were trying to get out to do more things, but between a lot of things happening on my end and then Rob's presentation schedule this year, I don't know if we're going to meet in the middle on a lot of stuff. It's just one of those scheduling things. But we are planning on going on a camping trip with Les Odell at some point in the near future to see what we can see. And he's the expert. Les Odell, remember that name. You've heard us talk about him before. He's been on the show a couple of times. He knows his stuff. He's skeptical as well. But he's experienced things that he can't explain, and he's constantly on the hunt for that kind of stuff. He goes out into the woods by himself for days at a time, just camping alone. And he's seen and heard some very compelling things. So Les Odell is your resident expert. Also, you can check out Amy Boo. She's done a lot of stuff. I don't know how recently she's actually been out to do things, because she went through a health issue after the virus stuff from the last few years, and it hit her pretty hard. And I don't know where she's at as far as that goes. I don't want to get into anything dramatic, but I don't. Me and Amy Boo are just not compatible minded people. I'm not saying anything mean about her. I don't want to insult her. I don't want to say anything like, I don't like Amy Boo. It's just, there are some issues that we just can't seem to come to grips with, and that's just how it is. And that's how it is sometimes. But I can, I understand that, and I can still respect her as a researcher. And I'm not going to talk bad about her. I have no reason to. But Les Odell has a book out. So look that up as well. It's probably on Amazon, which is where a lot of people get their books out. Let me take a... Yeah, James, there was. My cats are like running amok right now. But so yeah, Bigfoot stuff. And I have a couple other... I got a few different slides and things. Whoops. Hit the wrong button. The tablet here is pretty sensitive. I've got a few other slides and some things that people have posted, some artists' renditions and things. And this here is like potential anatomy of a Bigfoot. I don't know if I can't really increase the zoom on that. So if you guys can, by all means. But that's they're fighting behind me now. I'm going to get my head clawed open. But the standard Bigfoot Sasquatch template is a lot like this. You've got the long hair, you've got the big hands with the long kind of ape-like arms, the big feet, the face that's both kind of ape-like and both kind of human at the same time, which is why I lean on the Neanderthal theory. But you have variations of this. They can come in different fur colors depending on their region of the world. They can even, like, some of them even wear their fur differently. Like Momo, the Missouri Monster, was like, has it down in front of his eyes and things like that, and like blocking their view almost with like red eyes and stuff like that. But who knows? That's a good suggestion. I will take a look at that. Like I said, I've seen the most recent attempts to clean it up, and I don't know if maybe it was just the AI making it look that way, but it made it look even more. It made it look even more fake to me. But we all see things a little bit differently, and I've always kind of thought it didn't really look real. It looked made up. But once again, Bob Gimlin, by all accounts, is very sincere. And Rob has met him. Rob has met him in person. He declined to do an interview for us, which is fine. we're not going to be mad about that. We respect his privacy. Um, but he seemed very sincere, very down to earth, very like, what, this is what happened. This was the thing. There was some dramatic stuff that happened a couple years back involving somebody who supposedly was part of his group, who said that they actually killed one and tracked another, and it was a lot of back and forth and a lot of claims, but nothing really to back it up. And a lot of it seemed like it was intended to make Bob look bad and to drive up the popularity of the person making the claims. So do with that what you will. But I think there's something out there. I think there is, regardless of whatever it is, regardless of whether it's it's a Neanderthal throwback or whether it's an actual ape-like natural creature. There is something out there. I think too many people have seen things out in the woods and heard things, and the wood knocks and that kind of thing. Interesting point. Very interesting point. I will have to take a look at that and see what I think about it. Yeah, I do think that there is something out there. Again, I don't know what it is, but I think it's there. The other thing too is there's and we've talked about this on the show as well, and this was talked about. Hold on one moment. I have a cat that's getting into trouble. Here's some live video for you. Just a second. Get down. Come on. Get down. My daughter has a desk right over there that she uses for her homeschooling and for pretty much anything else, for drawing and whatnot. And the cat just was threatening to knock everything off. Real life. Unedited, unscripted. But there's a school of thought, and again, we've talked about it on the show here, that that Bigfoot goes hand in hand with UFO sightings, like on Chestnut Ridge, and that it's perhaps an interdimensional creature. I don't hold much stock in that. I think that's getting into a bit more of a fantastic area. I think that's getting into a more kind of like stretching things a little bit for me. But there's people who believe that it's and not to make it sound like they're wrong or that they're like out of their mind, because everybody believes their own thing. Okay, once again, open minds. They say that these creatures come from a parallel universe, and they travel here through dimensional rifts or portals. Chris George has talked about that. Once again, he was the one who went from the missing 411 stuff, park ranger. He went to into the Bigfoot nest, and he believes he walked through an area that maybe he was walking through an area of forest that he's walked through before, and then he realized he didn't know where he was. And everything looked unfamiliar, and even the plants looked different. Like they didn't look like natural plants that he had ever seen before. And he believed he walked possibly through a portal of some kind, and then ended up walking back, and everything being fine. But and it's, once again, I can't discount that. I don't get into it as much. I think it's a little bit too sci-fi for me, but it is interesting. It's another explanation, and I think the more stuff we can get to try to explain it, the more facts and evidence we have potentially to sift through, which is good. It's always better to have more ideas and more evidence than to pick whichever one is like, oh, well, this one seems like the most likely, and that's what we're going with. Boom, done. Because science doesn't work that way. Not, again, to cause drama, even though I know occasionally I have. But if the last few years have taught us anything, it's that you cannot take, oh, it's just science, at face value. Science is not a static thing. It is not something that just sits there. You can't just be like, oh, boom, 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 this is our evidence, settled, done, full stop. Science doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You have to continually ask questions. You have to continually bring in more evidence. You have to keep even something that's commonly accepted universally as true can be upended with the right evidence if the evidence contradicts it. And like, we're still debating the theory of relativity. When I was a kid growing up, it was a done deal. Theory of relativity, Einstein, boom, 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 settled science, right? The science is clear. But today, we're still debating because we have quantum mechanics, we have dark matter and dark energy, we have string theory, we have all this stuff. And every couple of years, it seems like there's a big article that says, oh, the theory of relativity might not be true because of this. But then if somebody else comes back, oh, but it is true because of this. And it's more evidence. More evidence is great. It's excellent. The more you can amass, the more you can put together, the more you can sift through to find what is working and what isn't, the better. And that's what science is. It's constantly evolving. Nothing is settled in science. When someone says the science is settled, they've given up. They've picked their version of whatever it is, and that's what they're sticking with. They don't want to see anything else. They've shut their mind off. They've decided to ignore everything else, which is why, as much as I don't believe that Bigfoot may be an interdimensional traveler, I have to leave my mind open to the idea. As much as I believe it's actually a Neanderthal throwback, I have to leave myself open to the idea that it could be an actual ape-like cryptid creature. Because it could be. We don't know. It's not settled. And that's just how it works. I'll tell you, it's a lot harder doing these shows by yourself. Just talking and talking and talking and talking. Because I don't talk like this at home. I am not a talker, generally. I'm usually the quiet one. Rob is the talker. I'm usually throwing in a comment and things here and there. So I get dried out pretty quick. But yeah, what do you guys think? What does everybody think out there? By all means, James has had a lot of good comments. Ingrained cyclist, which there's some details that you need to be aware of in a separate thing. So get in touch with your sister. I know who you are, and I know who your sister is, clearly. Get in touch. Get some details. Yeah, all you folks, what do you think? Throw your theories at me. I would love to hear more. And if you are not yet a member of our group on Facebook, if you don't do Facebook, that's okay. Valid point. But if you do, and you're not yet a member, go to This Uncanny Earth Official, the Facebook group. It is a private group because we didn't want to get bombarded with a bunch of spam bots and things like that. But generally, we'll see you, and as long as your profile isn't a clearly spam bot profile, then we accept you in it. And you can. Right now, the posts are restricted in a way that if you post, we have to approve it, because I made some goofs. I made some jokes that were supposed to be in another group that were like under the table kind of jokes for another group that were not really appropriate. My bad, character flaw. And I posted them in the Uncanny Earth group in a really supreme lack of judgment. And so I set that as a check for myself to make sure that if I post something that's bad, I'll have to go and look to see if it needs to be approved. And then I'll realize, oh boy. The obvious thing would be like, well, don't post anything bad, Spider. But we're all people. We all have our brands of humor, and sometimes mine is not appropriate for a wider audience. James says, once again, interdimensional being, possibly a spirit, demonic. And that's another thing, too. Some people believe that it is a spiritual creature. It might not even really be substantial because they can come and go with almost no evidence and like disappear like nothing. And I've even heard some people say, and again, not to make fun of anyone or to like downplay their theories, I've heard some people say that the footprints and like the hair samples and things that get left behind are left behind on purpose to throw you off the trail. Now, to me, and I know this might sound insulting, and I don't mean it to, but to me, that sounds like a case of the devil put dinosaurs here. If you've never heard that theory, it's something that very super hardcore orthodox religious folks will say. They'll say, oh, yeah, dinosaurs weren't real. The devil put dinosaur bones in the ground to test our faith. It doesn't jive with me. Doesn't jive with me. I think that's a little silly. But I could always be wrong. I could always be wrong. When I die, I guess I'll find out. Till then, I have to deal with what I've got on a day-to-day and what my brain tells me. But to have like the footprints and the hair samples and whatever to be like a red herring, I don't know. It doesn't seem plausible to me. But again, I don't want to insult anybody. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm putting down your thoughts on it because I could always be wrong. And if I am proven to be wrong on anything, I will say so. I'll say I'm wrong. I have said I'm wrong in the past a couple of times, not too often. Points in my favor, I suppose. I'm a critical thinker. But yeah, I could always be wrong. Yeah, and that's a good point too. I think there was some overlap. I think that between the time of the ingrained cyclist with a sense of humor, I think that there was some overlap between the total extinction of the dinosaurs and the ascent of modern man. And I think as a species, we have this collective remembering of that. And I think that's translated through our early holy books and things. I think that I think there's evidence that we saw these things. And maybe they were the last of their kind. Maybe we saw the very last dinosaurs on Earth. I don't think we saw huge packs of dinosaurs. I don't think we saw huge herds of dinosaurs. I think maybe there were a couple here or there left because we don't know exactly the lifespan. We have to guess. We guess from the fossil record about the lifespan of dinosaurs. They could have been extremely long-lived if they weren't wiped out by disease or combat between them for predation or whatever else. And that could have given rise to the legends of dragons during the Middle Ages, during the Dark Ages. You know? And another good point from James. And I think this is where the Egyptians got a lot of their ideas of the various different animal-headed deities. I don't think those deities were around at the time anymore. I don't think those beings were around, but I think they had a racial memory. I think as a species, we remember dinosaurs. And I think because I'm into the ancient astronaut theory and the whole Sumerian potential that we had high-tech beings here sometime in the past that tinkers with us genetically, I think they did try to create hybrid creatures. And I think we saw some of those in the past as well, but not very many. And there is different evidence like that. There's supposedly cave paintings. There's supposedly pottery, although some of that has been claimed to be a hoax. But there is a lot of that kind of stuff out there. I think, again, as a species, we've seen these things. And that's why I can't discount things like Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster or whatever. And a creature like Bigfoot, I think, is uniquely more likely to exist into the modern age because if it's a descendant or a relative of modern man, we know we're survivors. We've survived so many world wars and all kinds of other things. No matter how many times we try to kill ourselves off, we're still here. I think it's not outside the realm of possibility that some other offshoot of humanity exists out there in a wild form, doing what they can to survive. And that's another good point. And I may do we've been talking about possibly doing another show on ancient Samaria and then tying that in at some point in the near future. So I may come back to that point in a future show. Keep that in mind. I'm going to start wrapping up here a little bit early, but because it's just me, I'm starting to kind of run out of steam here. But I hope you guys had a good time. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And Rob will be back. He said next week when he's feeling better. Although I believe he has his one of his presentations next week, so maybe he will, maybe he won't. Don't forget. What else do we have going on? Here's the full schedule for we have our weekly schedules and everything. Tomorrow is Saturday. I took a week off from doing the Saturday spiritualist because I was burned out. I needed a day off because I had just so much stuff going on. But I will be back and I will be talking about ritual magic. I won't be doing any rituals. We don't do that kind of stuff on the show. It's all theory and explanation and ideas and things. But I'm going to approach it with how I've looked at it before and how different ancient texts have described it and why it is the way it is. Why do they put the robes on? Why do they throw the incense up? Why do they do the kind of stuff? It's all in the mind. So keep that in mind. In the mind. Keep it in mind. Huh? So that's tomorrow at 10 p.m. here on the Uncanny Earth YouTube channel. Or on Facebook, if that's where you're looking at that. Sunday, we are off. Monday is another episode of the Let's Talk About This podcast, which is on Spreaker, but it'll also be available on YouTube, Spotify, etc. after the fact. That's just usually a half hour of me rambling about some kind of nonsense. A little bit less focused than this. Tuesday, there's another episode of Twitch Tuesday with me. I'll be on my Twitch channel, and then that'll get uploaded to YouTube after the fact as well. If you are not following it yet, you can follow the Spider Does Things YouTube channel. So we have two. We have this Uncanny Earth one, which is the main repository of all that kind of stuff, and then I have my other one, which is all the stuff that doesn't really fit with this Uncanny Earth, but is still under the Uncanny Media Network umbrella, because we're all part of one big happy family. So I'll be gaming on Tuesday. Wednesday, I don't have anything going on. Rob potentially will be streaming on Twitch throughout the week, as he does. He has a different schedule. He kind of goes back and forth, so check with him if you want to know more specifics. Thursday is another episode of the Uncanny Spirits Club. And Friday, once again, we're back with this Uncanny Earth. So, thank you guys for tuning in. It was a good discussion. I appreciate all the comments, and I will see you folks next week.